Hi guys, this is Nu-Trix the synth guy, and today I'm talking about the synthesis of the D-05 or the D50. Now, I'm not going to talk about how to actually maneuver through the D-05. I'm going to talk about the synthesis only. I will come back to a notion that I was talking about in the last video I did, and people were really quick to tell me I was wrong about something, and they're right. It uses PCM sounds, not just that, but some of it is that, and it uses a synthesis called LA synthesis. I'll explain what it is. But the PCM part of the D50 was fixed. You only add an amount of sounds. I think it's like 100 sounds in it, plus loops. And these are just the wave file that you could select and play. And there was no way to add more. So I was misleading last time when I was talking about the fact that you could add more ROM memories or ROM samples in it. It's not possible. There were ROM cards sold at that time for this device, but they were basically selling these ROM cards as presets, new banks of factory sounds you could put in and use. So there were ROM cards because you could not erase them. They were not adding new PCM to the D50. So it was not an option for adding new sounds, just new presets of parameters of playing the sounds. So I got mixed up in that sense. What is linear arithmetic synthesis? The LA synthesis, called for the linear arithmetic, is basically the notion that Roland is combining two things. The PCM part, so playback of a sound, so linear sound. That's what the linear is for, is the fact that there's some PCM recorded sound into this. And the second part, arithmetics, is the combination. So you could combine two different sounds together. Either you mix the volume, which is just balancing volume of two sounds, or you can use ring modulation for one to ring modulate the other one. You're going to multiply them, and one will be carrying the other sound. So you're going to create a little bit like FM can do, or cross modulation, ring modulation. So one is modulating the other one. It creates a more complex waveform. Keep in mind that this was in the years after the big hit of the DX7. And the DX7 was using FM synthesis, which is one sound modulating the other one. So they were kind of, following that trend and say, this is cool, modulation is something people like, that digital clear sound is something that is in the air, we want to have that sound. And the D50 just like twisted around and say, okay, let's use PCM synthesis and then use ring modulation to create something complex. And it's pretty cool. It creates other types of sound, and the D50 has this sound because of that synthesis. Now, when you use the D50 or the D-05, first thing you need to understand is how they use different words to express the synthesis. The first notion is they use tone. Tone is a word that still is used by Roland today to express a sound, a timbre if you want. So if you use a tone, in the case of the D50 or the D-05, there's different ways to use it. You have an upper tone and a lower tone. And if you use it in a mode what we call split, well, it's obvious that you're going to split the keyboard, and on one part you'll have the bass and the other part you'll have the lead, and the two of them will be separate tones, totally different sounding sound if you want, or you could have the same if you want. But if you are in split mode, you have two different sound. You can have split mode, you can have dual mode. Dual mode, they're going to play on top of the other. Well, each of these tones can play 8 voices of polyphony. So if you play them separately, 8 on one side, 8 of the other side. If you play it in dual mode, they're layered and they play at the same time. So you hear 2 tones every time you press a key. If you're in the whole mode, they're going to have, you're just going to play the upper sound and everywhere on the key. So you're just going to play one tone. You're going to have 16 voices at that time because you're playing this one sound. And then you have separate mode. Separate mode, the D-05 can actually have 2 sounds, upper and lower, but on separate channels. And then when you're sending your note to that, channel 1 is a sound, channel 2 is another sound. So it becomes a 2 sound generator box. Okay, that's interesting for MIDI sequencing if you want. Then there's the same notion comes back. I'm like, with the notion of solo or S. If you have solo in the whole mode, but solo, whole meaning the whole keys is one sound. Well, solo means it's only one voice of polyphony. It becomes monophonic. If you're in a dual mode, But S in solo mode, well, the dual two sounds playing together, both of them are monophonic. If you're in split mode, upper solo, well, the upper is monophonic. If you're in split mode, lower solo, guess what? The lower is monophonic. And if you're in a separate mode solo, well, the upper is monophonic. And the lower, I don't know, they don't write what it is. So I guess the lower is also monophonic. Maybe not, we'll have to test it. So these are the different ways to separate how you play. So right away, you start to see if you're playing split, you're using two different sounds. But if you're in dual mode, you're actually creating a big sound made of two tones. So the notion of structure is a lot more wide in that sense, because you can use two different sounds to create a third sound, a bigger sound. Now, let's see what the tones are about. Now, the tones are using two what they call partials. And the logic is like these partials are combined to create one tone. Now, the partials, I like this graphic that shows the partials. You know, the first one is the synthesizer sound generator. And on the bottom, you have a PCM sound generator. So these two partials are combined together, create one tone. If you look at the synthesizer sound generator, you have a digital oscillator. This one is kind of the first, or in the first generation of virtual analog, because to have a digital oscillator that can change pulse width is something that you don't see normally. There's even an LFO that sends control to that. Then you have a TVF for the filter and a TVA for the amplifier. If your partial is selected to be a PCM sound generator, then you don't have a filter anymore. You only have the PCM, and you have the choice of the waveform you're going to play, and then you have the amplifier at the end with his own envelope, and that's it. So then you have a choice of combining these two partials together in different fashion. You can have two synths, synthesizer S and S, two synthesizers combined together, just mix the volume. The other option, option number two, you have these two oscillators, but then there's ring modulation between the two of them, so you create a more complex sound. Then you have the choice of having a PCM, that's where the P is for, and S for synthesizer, so you just hear the combination of two sounds playing at the same time. The other option, option number four, you have PCM and synthesizer, and you get a ring modulation between the two, and then you switch them around, synthesizer and PCM. So one of the two is the synthesizer being the ring modulation for the PCM, or the other one is the PCM being the ring modulation for the synthesizer. The next concept we need to understand is also the fact that you saw I was talking about TVF and TVA. Now TV, what is that? We used to see VCF, VCO, or DCF. VCF is voltage control filter, so it's a filter controlled by voltage. DCF will be digitally controlled filter, or DCO will be digitally controlled oscillator. But in this case, TVF means time variant filter, and TVA is time variant amplifier. Now, time variant is the type of envelope you see here. These are not normal ADSR. They go beyond that notion. In this case, you've got time 1, level 1, time 2, level 2, time 3, level 3, time 4, sustain, time 5, release. You have plenty of power to create weird shapes, up to the point you could even say, I want my time 1 to be the longest possible to go to 0. So I'm going to go from 0 to 0. I'm creating delay. I'm creating time waiting before I'm actually triggering that sound. So go back to the notion that if I have a dual tone, upper and lower, playing at the same time, I might have two sounds on the upper triggering right away, and I might have two sounds on the lower waiting maybe, I don't know, 10 seconds, and then you press the key, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, and then paw, the other sound comes up. But this is not something you can do with ADSR. So time invariant gives you a very flexible, very powerful envelope. If you just want to do the ADSR, it works because it has the same option. But if you want to do very complex patches of sound using 4 different partials, 2 in the upper, 2 in the lower, you can create really something wicked with that. You know, because you can have these evolution of the envelope. You have time 1, level 1, time, you know, you can have these evolutions really weird. So Could be really interesting. To be able to really show you how this works, I will go and use an editor. I'm using a free one that is from the company Bread and Butter Sounds. I just love that name, breadandbuttersound.com. I will put the link in the description below. You just need the browser and you need to have your D-05 connected to the computer, and you should be able to go with that. And it's a donationware, so if you like it, just share the love and give it a couple of bucks or more than a couple of bucks, knowing that it takes a lot of time to do these things. So right now I'm just sharing the love and sharing what he does, so that if you like it, you should give it some little dollar. At least buy him a coffee or something, you know, a beer, to say thanks. So let's look at what it is. You click on it and you load the patch. You have that graphic. I'm going to put this full screen. Here you go, full screen. Here you go. I have at the top here, I've got stuff that is for the patch, the MIDI, the mode. We're talking about whole, dual, split, all of these, the solo, dual, solo, all of they're here. This is more about playing on the keyboard, the bend, the pitch bend, the bend range, the aftertouch, controlling the pitch, portamento, you want the lower and upper, and you have the output. It's about the reverb, where you want the reverb to be, you know. And you have the type of reverb slash, there's some delay in this. Yeah, there's cross delay here, and there's reverb and delay and reverse gate and stuff like that, and space stuff. If we look at the section here, you have the lower section and you have the upper section here. And let's look at the upper for now. You have the upper LFO 1, 2, 3, knowing we said earlier that if you're using a PCM sound, LFO 2 and 3 are not used for anything. So you can get here and say LFO 1 is a triangular, sawtooth, or square. I'm muting the lower sounds, so I only hear the upper one. And then I picked to have synth and synth. So these two are synthesizer sound. If I turn one off, I hear only the first one. I have this envelope here, which is time and level, kind of a blue greenish movement. Time 1, level 1, time 2, level 2, time 3, level 3, time 4, level 4, sustain and release. That's for the filter envelope. And then you have the amplitude envelope at the bottom here. And you look at this graphic here, the dotted line is the amplitude envelope. Okay? So as you move things around, the shape changes to mimic the movement. Okay, that's the sound of this one alone. That's just this one alone. Let's say I'm going to have the square and go here for upper. I've got that sound here, which is another complex sound. If I turn this one off, let's bring this down a little bit. Now let's open the whole thing. So if you put the two at the same time, so it's not a super nice, well, it's not bad, but it's like wow sound, you know. If you go and synth mix, the second one, the synth mix, it's synth plus synth with ring modulation. If you have PCM, turn this one off. With that sound, you can just choose the loop you want to use. To hear the modulation, the best way to have is to bring down the lead one, okay? We have two sounds here. We have this one here. I'm turning this one. That's kind of the one that's going to receive the information. And the other one is too quick. It's going to be faster. I'm going to have this one here. come after that. I'm going to bring that up so I don't hear. I'm going to have flat one here, goes down. Too fast. And this one here. Okay, we'll hear that. That's the second one, okay? And if I go to second structure, which is a synth mix with a ring modulation for the second one, we'll hear that wah wah. Let's bring that up. You have these little noises. That's exactly what ring modulation does. Let's switch to PCM with the synth. And switch that to PCM with ring modulation. The PCM now sounds like it's sizzling. That's the ring modulation happening here. And the other one would be synth with ring modulation for the PCM. So the second one is a PCM. Okay, and the next one is just two PCM playing together. And PCM with ring modulation for the second one. Now just listen to the PCM sound you have. You have a bunch of them. And some of them you go, okay, the Marimba. Sounds like there's not a lot in that. Vibraphone, it should be longer. These are really short sounds. Electric guitar. But that's not, it's just like, what is that? These are the picks. The beginning of the sound. Upper bass. There's no power in that. There's just well, there's this whole logic behind how this is built. Is that most sounds, when you sustain them, you can't really know which one they are. It sounds stupid when you say that like that, but when you listen to a piano and a violin, when you get to the sustained part, it's very hard for your brain to say, oh, that's a violin. You might say it sounds like a string being played, yes, but the difference is mostly in the way it's being played and on the attack. The attack is the most important part, and your brain really rapidly goes violin with the bow, or guitar, which is a string, with a pluck. Oh, piano, string again, but with a hammer. So your brain will react to the fact that the attack is totally different because it's either plucked, play with the bow, or hit with a hammer. And this will change your perception of the sound right away. So then what they decided to do is to create all these little sounds we have now. Remember, when it came out, RAM and memory was really high cost. So they really just took the attack of these sounds, and then if you want to create the whole sound, if you want to do an acoustic simulation of sounds, you would have on the other sound, like the upper part, let's say upper two, would be the main sound when you sustain that sound. So these two together, you would have the attack that sounds like a piano sound, and the sustain that gives you the reaction of the piano. And again, you could have two sounds at the same time. You could have two partials on each sides, and then have a whole sound made of 4 different tones. So that's where it becomes really powerful. Now let's just, for fun, let's move to some of the sound. Let's actually request that sound. Well, let's just turn this off for now. So that part is the upper one. Okay, let's close this. So the PCM is just that, a kind of a wind sound. And you go. This sounds, you know, very nice. Turn on this one. So it's a very wide sound. So it's made of 4 different partials. One of them being a waveform that is a sample. All of them, the other ones are just synthesis, digital synthesis. So you can have these really warm sound. Let's have another one. That's the piano sound. Let's look at how it's built. Request synthetic electric. Yeah, waveform. These are just 4 different synthesizers. Square, 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 square. They're mostly the same. This one is a little bit higher in pitch for harmonics. And what you have, they're slightly different in the sound. Let's turn this one off. So the lower creates the body of the sound. So the fundamental, mostly. And the 2 together creates more of a vibrato. There will be tuned differently. And then you add the upper one and the upper 2. The upper 2 is more like a twang sound. Let's turn the other one just to hear that. So you're higher in pitch right away. And you get the harmonics. That's what you have with this one. So if you turn the other 2 on. It sounds good, you know, that's what it is. So it's not all PCM. It's not all wave-based. The synthesis in this, you need to look at this thing and say, it's like having 4 different, synth, or having 4 different really powerful oscillators combined into this great machine. So let's just try this one. Okay, pipe solo. Request that one, pipe solo. Well, that's kind of obvious. You have the lower section here. Turn it off for the upper one. The lower section is these 2 breath sounds. This is just the blowing into the instrument, and the other one is actually the note of the first. And that's really important because your brain right away when you hear this, you go, it's a flute. Just that. You don't have the body of the sound, but you have the attack, and that's really important. And then you go turn on this one. You get the sustain, and you have this one. Let's turn these off just to hear the other one. If you don't have the attack, how does it sound? Sounds like a synth. This sounds like a synthesizer. But you add the introduction of the sound, and then you have... It's a flute. Well, it's not perfect, but most people go flute, electronic, but flute. It sounds like that. So this combination of PCM and synth really is interesting. It gives you the power to create a lot of these little sounds. That's such a classic sound from Roland. If you look at this, again, 4 different tones. If you look at the envelope, these are really cool. You see that there's a low envelope. The 2 of them, the first one is the same, and then the second one is also the same. So it's just like you have twice the same synth almost. And they probably just changed the pitch. Not even. They just have more, so it sounds bigger. That's it. This is the synthesis of the D-05 / the D50. I hope you actually enjoy this. I hope it gives you ideas of what to do with the D50. There's a whole wide spectrum of noises and sounds you can create with that. It could be very complex or simple. I guess that one of the reasons that people don't know too much about how to program these devices like the D50 or the D05 is that when you look at the D50 or D05, everything is in a menu. So you need to have a mental image of the whole synth to say this goes there, and when I'm changing this, I'm actually changing the LFO of the partial number 2 on the lower sound. Mentally, it's a hard thing to manage to figure out where you are in the structure. So that's why I prefer to use an editor to show the structure. And I suggest you try the editor, you work with the editor, at least to have a mental image of the whole structure. And when you're comfortable with that, switch to just using the panel, because you'll know where you are in that big screen of menus and options, you know. So make some noise, make some music, and if you have any patches you want us to hear, put the link in the comments. We'll be more than happy to hear what you created with these, and not just use the preset. Create your own stuff, guys. And that's it. If you like what I'm doing, thumb up. If you want to follow me on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and what's the other one? Instagram, I'm somewhere over there. Just follow me and just enjoy. See you guys.